Okay, we're back with the 15-19 patch notes. We've got nerfs to Corki, Pantheon, Poppy, Sivir, buffs to Ahri, Brand, Caitlyn, Diana, Draven, Jinx, LeBlanc, Lillia, Mell, Seraphine. They're adjusting Jax, Lee Sin, Syndra, and there are some system changes to Celestial Opposition, Redemption, and Unsealed Spellbook. So let's see. Brawl is back, right into the champion changes. Ahri, damage per hit on her R going from 60 to 120 to 75 to 175. That's a pretty significant damage buff. But of course, she's not using her R very much. So compared to other abilities like her Q that she would get off more often, it's not, it's not maybe too crazy, but the AP ratio is staying the same at 35%. And yeah, you're not going to get, I guess, rank 3 on your ult for a very long time until you're level 16. But we're still seeing this jump up from, 15 and then 35 here at rank 2. I think that that's somewhat significant. Obviously, you can ult multiple times, but not super spammable. So that's a nice little buff to Ahri. Shouldn't be anything too crazy. Brand is a little weak, especially in his more income-heavy roles. Okay. Monster damage modifier 2.6 to 2.65 for his passive. So that's going to help him a little bit in the jungle. W Pillar of Flame 75 to 255, staying the same at 75 to 255. 60% AP ratio is going to 70%. So he's getting 10% AP on his W. R, damage per hit 100 to 250 to 100 to 250. 25% AP to 30% AP. So he's getting 10% on his W and he's getting 5% on his ult. This is obviously a champion that benefits a lot from that. It's a little bit interesting because they're saying in his more income-heavy roles, so they mean outside of support. So I guess they're saying, because Brand can be played all over the place, right? Brand can be played in support, he can be played bot lane, he can be played in jungle, he can be played in mid, but really like mid and bot lane are less common, and I would say more recently he's mostly been a jungler, but like people have always played him a little bit support. Back in the day he was more of a mid laner, not so much anymore. Obviously, some people play in bot lane. But yeah, so they're saying that this is going to impact everything but support. I was a little bit curious what they meant by income-heavy roles, because I wouldn't have described jungle as an income-heavy role, but they're buffing, obviously, his jungle. So I would expect this to help him the most in jungle. I don't think that we're going to see, outside of people who just, play the champion in mid or bot, I don't think we're going to see like that become a thing. So it's mostly just going to be a nice little boost to Brand jungle, and then none of these changes do much for support because you're not getting as much AP, and income in those roles. Since it's not a base damage change, it's going to affect support a lot less, so it seems fine. Also fine, like Brand was pretty good in jungle, but haven't seen him in a while, so that should be okay. Caitlyn, base AD 60 to 62. Yeah, so I want to see why they said this. Caitlyn's been missing from pro play for quite some time now, despite her reputation as a lane bully, as her ability cast are not potent enough. We're pushing up her basic attack power with the hope that she has a real shot at making it into some games this Worlds. So I think they fundamentally misunderstand why Caitlyn isn't good anymore. And it has a lot to do with the minion waves and how they were changed. Minion waves are a lot squishier. And so whereas Caitlyn before in bot lane had like a unique level of like her advantage as a strong lane bully came from her auto attack range, and then what she could translate her auto attack range into in terms of like being able to control the minion waves and like freeze on you and then zone you out from really far range, or her ability to wave clear with her Q. And those things just don't really exist for Caitlyn anymore because it's so much harder to freeze nowadays because the minions kill each other so fast. And yeah, her pushing like and clearing waves is just not anywhere near where it used to be. And 2 AD is not going to change that. So it's a nice little buff that will obviously probably bump up her win rate a little bit, but it's not really solving the fundamental problem. And so it concerns me when they, when I read like the paragraph about why they're changing or why they think it's bad, and they don't understand what the problem is with the champion. It's very similar to talking about like the Braum changes. And it's like, oh, Braum's win rate's really high. Well, it's like, yeah, Braum's win rate was really high because the champions in AD carry and support in the meta supported Braum being a much better champion all of a sudden, because nothing changed about Braum or his items. So obviously it has to be something else. When those external circumstances go away and you took away 12, 15 armor from Braum, he's going to become weak. And, so if you target the wrong thing or you just don't understand the change, then that can be kind of annoying, because champions will end up being weaker or stronger later, and then you have to go back and adjust. So like, let me make sure this is on the right patch. So this was like last patch. Braum's actually down to a 49.2% win rate right here. So not to say that, Braum can't be at a 49% win rate, but Riot said in their previous patches that when they nerfed Braum, that it's okay for Braum to be above a 50% win rate because he's not a super difficult champion to play. And so for Braum to now be sitting at a 49% win rate because maybe the shifting AD carry meta or what's happening with support itemization and the way people are building and stuff like that, favoring things like redemption more and stuff like that, which isn't as good on Braum, going to play more enchanters and stuff like I talked about that were underrated as people started shifting their support pools towards more enchanters, more Nami, more Karma, more Lulu, more Milio. As that started to happen, Braum became weaker because Braum's much better into, tanks like Nautilus and Leona than, or the Alistar matchup or something like that than he is into those poke champions. When Riot nerfs a champion like they did to Braum, and then they don't understand why the champion was actually good in the first place, so they nerf some random stat about the champion like his armor. Now all of a sudden he's too weak because now that everyone's playing enchanters and mages and in support, or I wouldn't really say mages, but now that there's a bigger emphasis on playing enchanters, Braum is like, much weaker. So, what's going on there? And Riot, as I unfortunately predicted with Braum, they just forget about him, right? It's like, okay, we knocked, I forget exactly what it was, like 12, 15 armor off of Braum. It's like, okay, now he's sitting at a 49% win rate when 4 weeks ago, we said it would be cool if he's sitting at like a 50.5 or 51% win rate because he's not a super difficult champion. Not a lot of people play him. All of a sudden, Braum's down to 49%. And we hear nothing about the champion anymore. So same thing. I don't know. So I just wish that like they would understand why the things are the way that they are a little bit better. Same thing with Caitlyn. It's like, it's not because her ability cast aren't potent enough. It's because she can't freeze and wave clear like she used to be able to before the minion changes and stuff like that. So anyways, Corki is becoming a little stale in pro play, so we're delivering a nerf to open up bot lane metagame for Worlds this year. So they're talking a lot about Worlds. I wonder if this is a Worlds patch too, or if that's the next one. I wonder if it says here the bulk of our changes for Worlds 2025. So maybe there's one more patch before Worlds and they can make some minor adjustments or something, but they're throwing out all of the major changes that they wanted to make before Worlds on this patch so that if something goes wrong, they can adjust it one more time before going into Worlds. So this is basically the bulk of the Worlds changes, and then next patch will be a very minor adjustment patch. Q Phosphorus Bomb on Corki, 70 to 250 to 60 to 240, so it's losing 10 damage at all ranks, and its AD ratio is also going down from 130 to 125%. How is this opening up the bot lane metagame for Worlds this year? Oh, they mean to get Corki out of pro play a little bit. I mean, this isn't enough damage that it should get Corki out of pro play. But it definitely makes him maybe a little bit lower priority, and then it opens up. I see what they're saying. I thought that they were... I don't know what I was reading that as, but... Okay, Diana. This is a big change. Monster modifier on her passive from 2.6x to 3x. And I've heard that, you know, when Diana was at 3x before, that's when Diana jungle was extremely strong. And so, and she's also, as I think they're saying here, she's good in mid lane, weak as a jungler, so she'll also be a flex pick. So this is a pretty significant buff, I think one of the more significant ones of the patch, because it could mean that Diana jungle is just straight back into the meta, both for Worlds, obviously, and for solo queue. Draven has a bit of room for buffs in regular play and is completely missing from pro. Okay, so his W attack speed is going from 20 to 40 to 30 to 50%. So he's getting an extra 10% attack speed on W. And his R damage is going from 175 to 375 to 200 to 400. So he's getting plus 25 damage on his ult at all ranks. And then I think this stays the same. The bonus AD ratio just stays the same. Nothing crazy here, but definitely will, you know, bump his win rate up a little bit. And again, I haven't really seen Draven even in solo queue like at all. So that's probably an appropriate change there that should help him a little bit, but nothing that's going to do anything crazy or bring him back. Jax base HP 665 to 650. So he's losing 15 base HP. We'd like to see Jax as a more meta-defining top laner at Worlds, but acknowledge that he's already strong for regular players. We're making his strengths more windowed, something that highly skilled players in coordinated teams can readily harness. So they're just making it so that, like, Jax, because of the minus 15 HP, is a little bit weaker, right, early and overall. But when he has R level 6 plus... and if he plays around his ult, his initial armor gain is way, way up. So from 25 to 75 to 45 to 75. So he's gaining an extra 20 armor for free on his rank 1 ult. And gaining that armor is going to make him significantly tankier at level 6 when he gets his ult up. So if he can play around this well, then he'll be much stronger and able to even win certain matchups that he wouldn't normally be able to win with this window. The magic resist gain is still at 60% of armor gain, so he gets 60% of this 45 armor as magic resist, and that means that he'll get more magic resist at level 6 when he ults as well. And the resistance gain per additional champion hit is unchanged. So yeah, and if minus 15 HP is not like a huge HP nerf or anything like that. So definitely players who are able to play around this should be stronger, like significantly stronger. And players who don't, or more casual players, would hopefully get hit by this a little bit when they try to, you know, fight early, you know, in a really thin way. So then we have Jinx. Jinx has been all but missing from pro play. So 80 to 200 on her Q's bonus range to 100 to 200. So she's gaining her old Q range back. This is going to make a big difference in like early trades in bot lane, her ability to wave clear and get the push, because she's going to be able to utilize that extra range to bully people out level 1 and stuff like that, in a way that she, you know, in a little bit of a stronger way than she can now. E Flame Chompers, 70 to 270 to 90 to 290, same 100% AP ratio. I don't think that the damage here on E is as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. Like, it's kind of hard to hit Jinx E, and when you do, the person's usually dead anyways by quite a bit of damage. So, like, how many times are you hitting Jinx E on somebody where they're gonna, you know, live by 20 damage or so, you know, 10 after their resistances are applied? It's, you know, but, you know, it's a change that's a benefit nonetheless. I think the more interesting thing here is, you know, the range on Q. And yeah, I think Jinx is fine right now. I think that this change helps her quite a bit as well. So that should be fine. LeBlanc W distortion damage 75 to 235 to 75 to 235, 70% AP ratio to 80% AP ratio. So she's getting 10% AP ratio on her W. And then R Mimic for distortion. So this is her RW. Is the same base damage, and then it's going from 75% AP to 80% AP. So she's getting a 10% AP ratio increase to her W and a 5% AP ratio increase to her RW. So, you know, that's kind of a big deal because like LeBlanc gets a lot of AP, and she's a champion that focuses on like all-inning. And so her damage numbers matter a lot because they're like increasing her threshold at which she can kill you at, her lethal threshold. And so having an extra, you know, 15 or 30 damage, you know, at 100, 200 ability power, and, you know, much more going up, makes a big difference in her ability to kill or not kill somebody. And so that makes her all the more potent. And LeBlanc is already like, she's not a bad champion. So they're definitely making sure that she's strong headed into Worlds, and obviously for solo queue as well as a byproduct. Lee Sin is a very performant jungler. I don't know about that. Armor growth 4.9 to 4.5, so he's losing a little bit of armor growth, but his Q damage is going from 55 to 155 to 60 to 180. That's quite a lot of extra scaling too on his Q here. Well, not, you know, I wouldn't really call it scaling because he gets it by level 9. So that's actually quite a bit of extra early damage on his Q. And then we're going from 155% bonus AD to 95% bonus AD. Oh, that is a huge nerf to his scaling though. Yeah, they mentioned the sharp early game. So this is a really significant change. Not that Lee Sin's identity is different than this, but you know, his identity has always been very strong early game, falls off super hard, you know, going way back to season 3 and season 2. I don't know if he was out in season 2, but anyways, you know, going back in the day when I started playing, Lee Sin has always been a champion that is very performant in the early game and kind of falls off. But this makes that even more extreme because it gives him a lot of damage for free earlier on. I mean, you know, level 9, you're getting plus a 25 damage on Lee Sin Q. And, you know, but you're losing, what is it, 60% bonus AD ratio on his Q? I don't know. I think this is really, really bad. I think that they said that they wanted power neutral adjustments, but this is just negative, isn't it? I mean, so just for example, to do a little bit of math, because, I mean, obviously Riot did some math, right? You know, it's their job. So if you're losing 60% of your bonus AD, let's say that you have 100 bonus AD. That's quite a lot, actually. But let's say that you have 100. Losing 60% would mean losing 60 damage. So even if you have just 50 bonus AD, which is like, I mean, what does Lee Sin build as his first item? Let's take a look. I bet he gets more than 50 AD in his first item. Okay, so like most common is Eclipse or Sundered Sky. So if you go Sundered Sky, you get a little bit less. But so this is 60 AD, right? So at 50 AD, you're losing half of what you would at 100, so you lose half of 60, so you lose 30 damage, and you only gain 25 flat damage. So in other words, this is a nerf once Lee Sin is just a nerf to his Q damage once he has 50 AD or more or less. Like, that's around where the breaking point is. It's actually almost even worse because it's like it scales with itself too. So at earlier ranks, like you have 2 points in your Q at level 4, you're only getting an extra 10 damage, but you're losing 60% of what you would get from a longsword on your Q. So whereas before you get 10, you're losing 60% of that. So you wouldn't get 10 from a longsword before, right? You would get 15.5 damage. Now you're down to 95%, so you get 9.5 damage. So you're losing 6 damage off of your Q. If you just had one longsword, off of one longsword, you get 10. So you only get a 4 damage increase if you're level 4 with one longsword as Lee Sin. It's a 4 damage increase. Whereas once you get 50 AD, you're almost at a point where you're doing less damage. So this just, and then he's losing armor growth. So this says that it's power neutral, but this is just a nerf, because this falls off and the break-even point is so early on into the game that it's just trash. That's just is really bad. And like I was saying, I don't even think they're saying that Lee Sin's a very performant jungler at almost all level of play, but I don't think that that's true. I think that Lee Sin is like a difficult to play champion that for the most part is struggling. And I mean, we can just look at the win rates, right? Because they just said it's good at all levels of play, right? So like, yeah, we're still on the previous patch here. 49% win rate Emerald Plus. 49.3%. Okay, I mean, let's just run through some lower ranks, because they said he's performing at all ranks. He should do worse in lower ranks because he's hard. 43% in iron, but that, that's whatever. That's just iron. Okay, iron, bronze. Let's take a look, because I just don't believe that that's true. So I don't even see him. Where is he? I might be blind like him. Where is he? 44%. Okay, so he's still underperforming. So he's 43% in iron, 44% in bronze. Now we're into what, like silver? 46%? We're climbing up. Most players, by the way, are in iron through gold. Lee Sin is at a 47% in gold. He's gaining about 1% per rank. Wait, so what do they mean he's overperformant? He's not even performant. And it's not to say that he didn't even gain a percentage moving up here to, are we in platinum now? 47.5%, he gained half a percentage point. So that's not to say that Lee Sin's the type of champion that needs to be sitting at 50% win rate, because he's a difficult champion. He should be at a slightly lower than 50% win rate, because he's so hard that new players playing him who don't know how to play him, non-champion mains, are going to have a lower win rate. But people who are proficient at the champion can do well, that's fine. But that means that his resting win rate is going to be a little bit lower than 50%. But it doesn't mean that 47%, I mean, he's sitting at 43% to 47% in iron through to platinum. And it does not get better. I mean, it gets a little bit better. Okay, 48.5% here in emerald. In diamond, he's almost up to 50%. I think they mean that he's overperformant in Master Plus. But that's a very different thing, because he's the most picked jungler, highest, well, not highest win rate, but, 51% win rate. That's pretty good for Lee Sin, for Master Plus, right? Even in Master Plus, there's probably a lot of people who are picking Lee Sin who shouldn't be. There's a lot of good, Lee Sin players and mains in Master Plus too, obviously, but then you'd just be saying that about every champion. So I think that you could say that Lee Sin is overperforming in high elo or in Master Plus, but I don't think that you can say Lee Sin's overperformant in all ranks. That's crazy. At almost all levels of play. That's just incorrect. And this is just a straight up nerf. So I don't know what Riot's cooking with that one. Lillia is a little weak, and we'd like to see some AP junglers at Worlds. Okay, bonus damage 100 to 200, on her ult to 150 to 250, so she's gaining 50 flat damage. She's also gaining a 5% AP ratio increase to her ult's bonus damage, and the cooldown is being reduced from 150 to 110 to 140 to 100. So 10 seconds off of her ult at all ranks, a 50 damage increase at all ranks on her ult, and a 5% AP ratio increase on her ult. Pretty nice little changes, but like nothing crazy that's going to really shift her. Like most champions in the game, you're not necessarily like pressing Lillia ult off of cooldown or anything like that, especially in pro play or at a high level of play. And while the bonus damage is nice, like I was saying with Ahri, when you have these damage changes, the damage amounts on your ult don't tend to matter as much as you might think that they would, because let's say that you got like, plus 20 damage to your Q, and you're spamming your Q on like a 10-second cooldown or something like that. I'm not even talking about Lily, I'm just talking about any generic champion in the game. You're going to add that damage up when you're hitting multiple Qs, and it's going to add up to being quite a lot of damage. Whereas if you get plus 50 to your ult, now, like we talked about with LeBlanc, maybe that aids your potential to actually all in and kill somebody, even in a skirmish for a champion like Lillia. But a lot of times that ult damage, extra 50 damage is being used so infrequently that it doesn't add up to a whole lot of damage. And they were going to die, or they were going to die anyways in the vast majority of circumstances, because they were getting Lillia ulted and they were going to take a huge amount of damage from your team if they were about to die by 50 HP or whatever. Anyways, you probably would have gotten them most of the time. So it's a very, it's one of those things that like over 1,000 games, sometimes somebody is going to die, an extra person will die from Lillia ult because of the, in the follow-up, because of the 50 extra damage. And so it'll push your win rate up just slightly, when you're playing thousands and thousands of games. But when you're playing like 10 pro games at Worlds, it just may never come into effect and do anything, unless you get lucky and it's one of those few scenarios where the buff mattered. And so what ends up happening is the champion just doesn't seem, like any different than it was before. Now, that's not to say the other changes don't matter or collectively this won't do. I'm just commenting on the nature of ult damage buffs like that. Mell is statistically very weak. I feel like I've heard this one before, and it scares me every time they say this one. I swear I've read this sentence before in the patch notes. Passive, Searing Brilliance, bonus damage on attack per spell, 24 to 75 to 24 to 99. And it's going from 3% AP to 9% AP based on level. That's pretty significant. Maximum bonus damage on attack 75 to 225 based on level, plus 9% AP, to 72 to 297 plus 27% AP. See, this is a tough one to read because it's quite a significant damage increase, but it's quite a significant damage increase on her auto passive, but it's like Mell's auto passive is not anywhere near the thing that gives Mell her strength or makes her good or OP as a champion. So it's hard to say because it's just a weird change. It's like, imagine you took Braum W and instead of it giving 20 armor and magic resist, you just randomly buffed it so that it gives like 50. It's like, I mean, that's a nice change. It's going to move the champion in a positive direction, obviously, but it's like, how do I know whether that's going to make Braum broken or whether it's just going to be a nice little change? I don't really know because it's like, it's a big buff numbers wise, but it's not the part of the champion that makes the champion strong, if that makes sense. So it can be hard to read something like this, but it seems like the numbers are quite significant. Moving from 3% AP ratio on the autos to 9% is very significant. I mean, it's a tripling of it. And on top of that, they didn't just do that, but they also increased the base damage. And this is also something that gets multiplied, so it's like, it's quite a significant change here. you know, but her passive has never been the thing that's like making her strong. But maybe now it is, you know, who knows? So that could be quite an interesting change to watch what happens with that. Was Mell doing poorly? I hate Mell. I hate Mell. People haven't been playing at bot for a while. Let's see what 47. What rank are we at? We're at Master Plus here. It looks like Mell was not doing well. Yeah, 47% in Master Plus, 46.8% in Emerald Plus. Looks like Mell was not doing great, so these changes could be fine. Okay, Pantheon, Q Comet, Spear, Monster Modifier going from 0.9x to 0.75x. Yeah, Pantheon jungle has been really strong and picked quite a lot in competitive. So let's see. They just don't like Pantheon because he doesn't have a high skill gank pattern. Simply click on the enemy and they receive a stun. As a result, we're swinging very hard to bring down some of his power. Yeah, it looks like they're just trying to yeet Pantheon out of the jungle. W, Shield Vault, minion monster damage cap going from 200 to 120. So this probably slows down his clear quite a lot. Obviously, with these jungle changes, when you're looking at modifiers, it's helpful to know. And obviously not being a jungler and not wanting to take the time to test, or I wouldn't even know how to full clear properly on Pantheon. I need a jungler on speed dial for every champion. But, you know, it would be really nice to know what the difference in full clear speed would be between, like, let's say Diana, when she was at a 2.6 ratio with her passive to 3 on someone who knows how to actually clear on Diana. And same thing with Pantheon. Pantheon's going from this 0.9x modifier down to 0.75. His W is also going to do less damage, I think, you know, to minions because of this cap. Sometimes you won't reach the cap until later, so maybe that one actually won't matter as much, but I really don't know, you know. So it'd be interesting to see how fast or slow the clear is. It's obviously the case that if, you know, and I don't know off the top of my head, that if the multiplier going from 0.9 to 0.75 means that he clears 5 seconds slower, obviously that wouldn't change much. It's a little bit annoying. It can affect some circumstances, like we talked about almost with the ult damage, where like in a small percentage of games it could affect some play. You know, you go to gank a lane, being 5 seconds late is too big of a difference in that situation, and it changes the game. But most of the time, it won't make a huge difference if you're clearing like 5-10 seconds later. But, you know, it's hard to say. If you're clearing, 20 seconds later, then it's like, that's a gigantic change, because now it's like a different champion almost. And that can affect a lot of plays. To the point where you're like playing around that every single game. Okay, Poppy. Q, max health damage cap to minions and monsters, 75 to 195 to 50 to 170. So yeah, this is interesting. Poppy is quite a good champion because she counters so many other champions, and she's super simple and easy to play. Plus super solid utility tank champion. So it looks like they're trying to do things to take away power from Poppy jungle, which is probably the most picked in competitive. Obviously, I'm thinking about things like Poppy support. But yeah, so Poppy has a relatively equivalent win rate spread across her roles, but is overall a little bit too strong in all three. She's also near the top jungle spot in pro play. Yeah, so they're mostly focusing on jungle, but they think that she's too good in all roles. In top lane being like a third role as well. In her R, Keeper's Verdict, this will affect all roles. The cooldown when its channel is interrupted is going from 15 to 30 seconds, which is pretty significant, because while you won't lose your ult cooldown entirely, it may mean that if your ult gets canceled during a fight, you don't have a second opportunity to use it during a fight. It's just basically on cooldown for the rest of the duration of the team fight. So that's actually kind of a significant change, and it's also a a change that I kind of like because it's rewarding the opponent for playing really well and canceling that and interrupting that channel. And so it is a like a high elo to pro skew change. So Poppy can still be fine in like top laner support. You know, let's say if you're like in slightly lower elo or whatever and you just enjoy the champion, but like players in pro play who can play around this gain a significant edge versus it if they play it well. So that seems totally fine. Again, same thing here. Like you have the max health damage cap from her Q. How early is this going to come into play? Does she reach the cap? And you know, how many seconds is that actually going to increase her clear by? You know, it could end up being the case that it only increases her clear by 3 seconds or 5 seconds, and it just doesn't make a difference. Again, it could also be the case that it's quite significant. I don't really know. Seraphine, mana growth 25 to 40. Very popular support and occasional mid laner, but is quite weak. Especially in lower MMR where a lot of her players are. So they basically think that they're, you know, I'll translate what they're saying here. Like, we have a super popular champion that people like and enjoy and are, you know, going to buy skins for and is kind of core to league. And we don't want the champion to be so weak that those people feel like the game sucks and is miserable. And so they're buffing Seraphine because she's popular and underperforming, which is totally fine. I mean, that's just how things should be done. So her mana growth is going from 25 to 40. Her HP growth is going from 90 to 95. Q high note, amplified damage at low HP now also affects monsters. Hopefully no one is... I mean, hopefully this just doesn't matter, the Q change. I'm noticing a trend here too with these changes. So I just want to say before we read the W change, maybe the W change is significant. Oh, it looks like, yeah, the W change looks like it is significant. These first set of changes are so fake because like Seraphine shouldn't need an extra 15 mana growth per level at all, right? It's like the only way you would need that is if you're like spamming your abilities at low ranks because you don't know how to like be patient with your abilities and play around your mana pool, and so you're just running out of mana on the champion constantly because you're spamming everything. It's like it's a very low elo skewed change. And then like the 5 HP growth per level is like the most significant one of the first 3 changes, and it's kind of nice to have a little bit of extra HP and tankiness on a squishy champion like that. But again, it shouldn't actually matter most of the time because you shouldn't, like if you're spacing properly, if you're playing well on the champion, it shouldn't help you. So this is something that's especially better for people who are playing the champion poorly. And again, that makes sense. So, you know, both of these base stat changes are targeted at making people who don't know how to play the champion very well do better on the champion. Hopefully this Q change just shouldn't really affect anything. I mean, I guess you could argue on support it still helps you maybe take a dragon or something faster. Hopefully nobody's playing Seraphine jungle, right? No one's doing that. So that's just kind of a non-change. And then W surround sound, healing 3 to 5% of missing HP per target in the circle to 8 to 16%. What does it mean per target in the circle versus regardless of targets in the circle? Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, that's not as crazy as it sounds then. Okay, that's a really important distinction. So you would get, like, let's say that your W had 5 points in it. You would get 5% missing HP as a heal per target in the circle. So if you had all 5 of your teammates in, you'd get 25%, right? So, but if you had just you and your AD carry in it, you'd only be getting 10%. Now this is saying it doesn't matter how many people are in your W circle to increase the heal. Instead, it's just, 8 to 16% flat, which is really nice Because if you're playing bot lane and you just have 2, you know, you're going from like 6% to 8%. So you're getting a little bit more healing there. And same thing as you know, as you get more points into it, you would be going from 10% to 16%. That's not crazy though, but that's definitely a significant buff to her healing. You've got to keep in mind again with these healing abilities too, that they're all being multiplied by Moonstone and healing and shielding power. So if you increase a heal by like 100, it actually gets increased just by Moonstone alone to like 135. And then with extra healing and shielding power, it can go even higher. You get like 150 healing or shielding for, you know, getting an extra 100. So that is significant in this as well, you know, because if she's going from a situation where she would have gotten, you know, 2 people with W and she would have been doing 6, now she's doing 8. That extra 2% of their missing HP could end up being a significant number. It would depend on how much missing HP. Let's say you're missing 1,000, an extra on both people, an extra 2% missing health on both of them would be 20, plus 20 would be 40. You know, and then that would be getting multiplied by Moonstone and healing and shielding power. So it's not an insane change, but to put it in the healing amount into like a number depends on how much missing HP, depends on how many champions, but it looks like it's a buff of probably somewhere between like 20 and 100 depending on the situation, which is a wide range, but you know, 20 to 100 healing, and then you add Moonstone in and it's even more. It could be a big difference, I think. Nothing crazy though. When I was reading it before, I thought it was really crazy because the numbers were changing by so much, but that the way it works matters a lot there. Sivir is a little OP in regular play, blah, blah, blah. Initial damage on her Q, 60 to 160 to 60 to 160. 100% bonus AD ratio to 85% bonus AD ratio. So minus 15% AD ratio there. Yep. I don't know. Her Q is a weird thing to target, but maybe it's just what they want to take the power away from. It seems like what makes Sivir so strong is her W, but maybe they feel like that's such a fun part of her kit that people enjoy that they'd rather her power budget, if it has to be nerfed, come from something else like her Q damage. But I don't know, a little bit weird that we would target Q instead of W, but it doesn't really matter. Not a huge change. We're delivering some power neutral adjustments to Syndra. I want to see if this is truly power neutral, because like what they said, Lee Sin was power neutral or whatever, and they just kind of hit him a lot. So Syndra's health growth is going from 104 to 100. Her armor growth is going from 4.6 to 4. So far we have like a moderate nerf, right? Especially to her tankiness. But again, good Syndra players should not really be relying on, you know, their extra 4 HP that they're getting per level from their health growth here in this nerf, or an extra 0.6 armor per level. Hopefully a good Syndra player is spacing properly and isn't really relying on that HP in almost any situation. Damage 75 to 215 to 80 to 220. So it's 5. Yeah, it's just 5 damage increased. Okay, so her Q is doing 5 more damage at all ranks. And it's also going from a 60% AP ratio to a 65% AP ratio. So now we have the balance. A good Syndra player is going to have a little bit less HP and a little bit less armor, but is actually going to deal more damage with her Q. And then her E cooldown on Scatter of the Weak is going from 17 to 15. I would say that this is even maybe a buff or a power positive change for Syndra, because again, a good Syndra player should just be able to play around being a little bit squishier and would love to trade extra damage and the shorter cooldown on E for you know, for the tank stats. Okay, items. So Redemption has been really strong. But I mean, I did a whole separate video on Redemption. The last video is on Redemption, so I'm not going to go into all of the details. But yeah, Redemption's found its place as a near unanimous first item for tank supports in pro play. we're looking to pull back on Redemption's power to allow items like Locket and Knight's Vow to compete. So the heal is going down from 200 to 400 per target based on their level to 150 to 350. So this is interesting because my conclusion in the video was that while maybe in pro play you can get more use out of it, because of the fact that you can kind of coordinate and play around it more, and that you can get more people into the circle and stuff like that as well if you were like team fighting with it. My conclusion was that Redemption was not actually a good first item on tank supports. So I was under the impression that Redemption was a little bit of an overhyped item, and this is a pretty like moderate nerf to the item. This is like a strong nerf to the item. So that kind of sucks because if the item wasn't actually that good and people were overbuilding it, then that feels kind of bad because now the item's just weaker. So, for example, the basic conclusion that I came to was that Locket gives you 400 more effective HP than Redemption, and is, for Braum at level 9, gives you 400 more effective HP than Redemption and was 100 gold cheaper. And so the active of Redemption would have to be so much better than the active of Locket that it would be worth losing 400 effective HP and the item being 100 gold more expensive. And I don't think that that's the case, because I really do think that the value that you get from Locket is not that much, like the actives alone. I don't think that the value that you gain from Locket's active is that much worse than Redemption. As I said before, I think that Redemption has some, its active has some very good properties to it. One thing I didn't mention that I should have talked about was the damage that Redemption deals, which isn't tracked by the tooltip, but you do 10% max HP true damage. And so you easily, if you're hitting enemies in the Redemption, or there's a 1v1 going on in a side lane and you hit both of the people fighting, you easily get a lot of damage out of Redemption that doesn't get shown in the tooltip at all. That, if you were thinking about both the damage and the healing that you were doing, would make it even stronger when you're comparing its active to Locket. There's something very nice when you can get the timing right and you're good at using the item about being able to use the item from range, whereas you can't do that with Locket, to affect side lanes and things like that, especially even in solo queue, maybe even more so than pro play as a support, where there's so many fights breaking out all over the place that you can have an impact on them with Redemption. So there is that. And, there's other things like Solstice Slay doesn't synergize with the healing and shielding power from Redemption because it counts as gaining bonus HP. It's not actually a heal, even though it very much looks like a heal and feels like a heal. It's not a heal. So you have things like that for a lot of tank support champions that are going Solstice Slay plus Redemption. It doesn't actually affect each other. One of the things I looked into as well that I didn't mention in the video is Locket actually has, I think it's an extra, we should look it up. Locket League Wiki. Locket has a lot of extra range in terms of the radius in which it gives the shield. So obviously you can use Redemption from a huge range, like halfway across the map, but the circle that Redemption creates is much smaller than the area that you can shield with Locket. And so the area that you can shield with Locket is 850 units around you, whereas Redemption is 500. And so that is a pretty significant difference as well. One of the reasons why I said I like Redemption, or I like Locket actually in the middle of a team fight, is because Locket's instant, whereas Redemption you have to wait for the heal to come through. So sometimes, especially if you're in a losing situation, the heal is hard to time, or people die so quickly that they die before the thing gets off. So Locket's instant, and it's shielding more people most of the time because it's a bigger radius. And so for that reason, plus others, I just didn't think that Locket was that much worse than Redemption. And keep in mind, you'd have to get, because you get 400 extra effective HP for 100 gold cheaper on Locket. It's like, we accept that Redemption's active can be stronger than Locket's, or is stronger than Locket's, but it needs to be 400 effective HP stronger. And there's no way Redemption's active was 400 HP stronger, effective HP stronger than Locket's. There was just no way. So now, like, one thing we can look at it here is, this is Locket scaling is 200 to 360. And now the Redemption scaling is going to be 150 to 350. So that completely changes this dynamic as well between Locket and Redemption, because Redemption actually scaled better than Locket. So with the old one, 200 to 400, by level 9, and the break-even point I actually didn't look at. Maybe we could still see it here. But the break-even point on Redemption was like before level 9. And you're not going to buy these items most of the time until around level 9, I think is a good assumption for about when you're getting your first item anyways. Maybe if you're like skipping boots or something like that, you get it earlier, but like maybe level 6 to level 9. So is this still... No, this is showing the new amount rather than the old amount. Oh, we can see the old amount here. So if we go back and look at where it was before, so at level 9 with Redemption, you had 294 healing, whereas with Locket, you had 275. At level 8, 265 with Locket versus level 8, 282. So Redemption was still outpacing. Okay, let's look at level 6. 258 versus 246. Or 247. So yeah, actually Redemption was already outpacing Locket by like level 4, level 5. Level 5, Locket was 237. Yeah, even at level 5, Redemption was 247. So, I mean, was there any point? Like level 3? Oh, it's immediately. It's just immediately. It's literally level 2. Because they both start at 200, but Redemption gains more per level. Duh. Okay, so Redemption actually outscaled Locket at level 2. So if you had a Redemption at level 2 versus a Locket at level 2, which you would never have, but it healed more instantly compared to Locket. So another thing that I didn't really talk about in there was that the heal from Redemption was just bigger than the shield was for Locket. Now, I heard some people saying things like, well, another thing is that healing is nice because, the HP is permanent, whereas the shielding on Locket is temporary. But we're not counting the amount of shielding that you give. The indicator on Locket indicates the amount of damage that you blocked, which is going to be HP that those people are going to carry forward in the same way that they would carry or retain extra HP from healing from Redemption. And actually, healing can be cut with Heal Cut, which is much more accessible and easily obtainable and cheaper than like the shield reduction. There's like the one lethality item that reduces shields when you get hit, but you have to apply it. It's like the healing on Redemption is actually much more likely to be reduced than the shielding on Locket as well. Is it just another little nuance about this? So very complicated item situation, but I just didn't think that Redemption for tank support specifically was better than Locket to begin with. And then, of course, if you're winning and really far ahead, Knight's Vow gains even more value when you're winning and really far ahead. So then Knight's Vow would even be better than Locket when you're winning and far ahead. So if you're winning the game, 10-0, Knight's Vow is significantly better than Locket. And so Redemption becomes like a third option for tank supports. So I think people were overvaluing it, and now it's just pulled back pretty hard because now Locket is actually just giving more shielding than Redemption at all levels, and it's giving you 400 more effective HP. So you have to find so much, and it's 100 gold cheaper. So you have to find so much value from the way you're using Redemption to make up for that, and to make that worth it. And I think that that's really difficult. Now, on the bright side, tank supports are not the only ones who build this item. Obviously, Redemption is actually better on enchanters, and I think enchanters are way too strong right now. And one of the reasons why their pick rate is going up is because people know that Redemption's a really important item right now in support to rush, especially in high elo solo queue. It's like Redemption rush first every single game. And that's causing people to say, well, if I'm rushing Redemption first and it's just the item is good, I'd rather play a champion. I mean, League's been like this for the past couple of years, but sometimes when an item's good, people play a champion to fit the item rather than building an item to fit the champion, if that makes sense. And so, like, I think people started switching to playing more enchanters more when this Redemption thing became good, or like in the spotlight, and people started building it more and more. When the Redemption craze started, I think people started playing more enchanters because they'd rather play a champion that actually synergizes really well with the item than build it on a champion that doesn't. And so on the bright side, while I don't think it made sense to build Redemption for tank supports anyways, for enchanters, they need nerfed, and this is a pretty direct nerf, and a big one to enchanters. So, you have that. Okay, Celestial Opposition. We're fixing a long-standing issue with Celestial Opposition that gave it very weird optimizations. Essentially, players could send a clone forward, and it would result in a nearly guaranteed slow bomb on a short cooldown. While it's fine that clones often mimic items, getting slowed by thin air just isn't a good experience. So now the champion or clone must be alive in order for Celestial Opposition slow to trigger. This means that, for example, attacking Neeko W won't result in you getting crowd controlled. Will no longer apply the AoE slow if the user is dead. Okay, yeah, seems fair. Basically for Neeko, if you had Celestial Opposition, like they're saying, you could cast W, especially right before you're about to die, which a lot of times you do anyways for the brief second of invulnerability, or invisibility, I mean. And if you had Celestial Opposition still, I mean, I don't know why you would be dying at that time, but in some niche situations, right, if your Celestial Opposition came up, you go back in with very low HP and you're about to die, you could send your clone out as a slow bomb, because when the Celestial Opposition pops, it would slow enemies around the clone. I don't know. This was kind of a niche thing. I guess they can remove it from the game if they want to. I don't think Celestial Opposition is all that good, and I think that Neeko's got so many weird little quirks like that to be honest, I don't know that it was worth changing. But whatever, not a big change. Rune's Unsealed Spellbook. Its recent buff took it from being entirely forgotten to the only keystone anyone not named Neeko even uses in pro play. On support. As a result, we're splitting the difference with the hope that it's still a viable keystone rune without completely dominating all choice. Base recharge cooldown from 4 minutes to 4.5 minutes. Minimum recharge cooldown from 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. Okay, we'll see what happens with that. I don't know if that's going to be enough. But, we'll see what happens with that. I have not been a big Unsealed Spellbook fan. I haven't tried using it a bunch, so I don't know as much as I probably should about how good Unsealed Spellbook is. But certainly, every pro support player is just running this nonstop right now. Maybe not so much in solo queue, but still more than you would have seen it before in solo queue for sure. And I think this is one of these keystones that I think people, myself included, are super slow to adopt. It's one of the most complicated keystone runes in the game, and it's definitely something that is fun to learn. And if you enjoy theory crafting and that sort of thing, jumping into figuring out how Unsealed Spellbook works is kind of a fun quirk of the game. But I don't know that keystone runes should be so complicated, instead of being more straightforward, and I'd like to see more regular options. But yeah, that's fine. And that basically concludes the patch. We got the Doombots, ARM changes. We don't care. Okay, Arena. Oh, I thought there was going to be something about AFK detection and that the game, but it's AFK for arena and then skins. What is it? It's just one? There's one skin. That can't be right. Oh, there's 3 skins. Or 4? Maybe that one was. No. This skin is going to the Mythic shop, and then these 3 are the new releases. So there's 3 new skins. I'm telling you, I've said it a million times. How does Riot go and release 3 skins in 2 weeks? I just don't understand it. It's like, it can't be the financially correct decision when it's like one of the only things that they make money from is selling these skins. Can it really be the correct financial decision to only have enough skin artists on the team that you can only pump out like 3 skins every 2 weeks? There's no way that that can be the optimal amount of people to have on the art team. They should have double the number on the art team so that they're consistently pumping out, instead of 3 to 6 skins every 2 weeks, they're pumping out, 6 to, what would it be? 6 to 12 skins every 2 weeks. And I bet that they would easily just make way more money from that. So, just a little financial advice to Riot here. You're supposed to hire someone if the marginal cost of their wage is greater or less than the marginal cost of the revenue that they can, or profit that they can produce, right? So it's like, if you could hire someone to make a skin, right? And it costs them, let's say for the time that it takes them to make a skin, it costs them, I'm just going to use fake numbers because the math will be too hard. If it costs somebody, if it costs $100 to make one skin, right? Even if you can only sell $101 worth of that skin, it is better to produce 100 and, to pay the person to make the skin for $100, even if you only make $1 profit, you push out the maximum number of skins that you can produce, okay? As long as you're still making profit. Maybe there's a scarcity thing going on. Maybe what they're saying is that, sure, if we produced like let's say this patch, well, this patch is a bad example because it's way too few. And maybe it's because they did the world skins last patch or whatever, the SKT skins or whatever it was. But it could be, this could be what's going on, is some fancy economics. And they're saying, well, that would be true. Like if we produced 8 skins instead of 7 this patch, we would have made an extra $40,000. But that's so little, but we sold like $1 million worth of it, but we only made like 40,000 something. Those are unreasonable numbers. But let's say we made very little profit, but it cost a lot, or like there was a lot of, well, even then, you want your revenue numbers to be higher just for the sake of it, I think, most of the time. Maybe not, because they're not really trying to attract investors or anything. They're just owned by Tencent. Maybe they're thinking that it's not worth it for players to spend $1 million that they would have spent on other skins produced at a cheaper cost to us. No, but the cost is fixed. Yeah, I don't know. They're totally cooked. They need to produce the maximum number of skins that they can that is profitable, right? So if it costs you $100 and you only make $101, it's still worth it to produce that extra skin. So you should be hiring way more skin people to produce like way more skins until the point where, okay, that last skin person that we hired is like producing a skin that's selling less than it costs, we're making less on the skin than it costs, and then you cut that guy and now you're at the perfect number or whatever, right? It's like, that's how you do it. There's no way in my mind, and I don't know the financials at Riot, there's just no way that 3 skins in 2 weeks is the optimal number of skins to create. There's just no way. Anyway, so they got to have somebody, look, they have somebody there working at Riot who knows economics, right? Who knows finance. Get that guy to figure out what's going on with the skin team and hire some artists, okay? I'm telling you. Okay, with that being said, that's the patch. Good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day.